Hey guys, welcome to the Tetra Health and Performance Podcast. Today we have an excellent episode. We've got an amazing guest and someone we've got a bit of a relationship with here, and we've met in the past and got nothing but great things to say about. We're blessed here to have Dr. John Rusin on today. And mate, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, hi John.
It's James.
Good
My pleasure, man. This is great to be on. So good to connect again.
Beautiful. Mate, I'd love you just to kind of just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of a bit about what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I've been coaching for 16 years. I'm a sports performance specialist, injury prevention expert, and I'm the founder of the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification, who's certified over 13,000 coaches in person since 2019. Started out in high performance athletics and sport, and that turned into a career in general fitness and performance, which I currently specialize in now, working with predominantly general fitness populations that want to look, feel, function their best, and live a pain-free life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. We have the same kind of passion as yourself. Like our passion is towards like on the all athletic attributes, and we really often feel that the general population are kind of left out in that kind of realm. And as we see the human body as kind of like a bunch of systems and all these different things that we can operate as, like for example, like how often do people say that sprinting shouldn't be for general population? Well, using your tendons is a very natural thing to have locomotion and gait and move well. So when we do design our programs, we design around stuff like that. We think about like getting this person to be as athletic as possible. And there's really no holds barred in a sense. And I think too often people describe certain training principles as, okay, now that's just for athletes. This is for general population. And I understand how obviously general population might have to be moved somewhere slower. So I think, but eventually they should be to get there anyway as a human body. So I think we have the same ethos as that in that.
For sure, man. I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions in the field today is like, all right, athletes are over there. Their goal is performance. And then all you other pieces of shit, you're over here. And your goal is to be healthy because you're unhealthy, you pieces of shit. And it's not that way, right? It's like health and performance must go together. We must create synergy. We must create a symbiotic environment for our lifestyle if we plan on not only living old, but to be able to do the things that we love to do at an old age. You know, that's the sheer definition of longevity. And I think that we just have this wrong today because there are many different training modalities out there that can benefit everyone in a different way. But the key is to try to adopt and implement as wide of an array of different physical characteristics as possible so we can simply reestablish and re-engineer what it is to be human again, what it is to have a human movement system, and something that will not only serve you at 30 or 40 years old, but serve you at 70, 80 until your last waking day. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. Performance versus health. They got to go together.
Well said.
Beautifully said.
I know each individual has their own things they need to work on, but through your lens, through your principles and beliefs, what do you reckon the most common low-hanging fruit for most individuals to start working towards that will give them the most return on investment? What do you reckon they should start off doing or start zeroing in towards?
From a training perspective, strength is going to be the commonality that can really go in a bunch of different directions based on goal sets or even based on where somebody's current presentation is at. And that's one of the fundamental beliefs of the Pain-Free Performance Specialist system is that we get stronger over time because strength can positively impact a myriad of different physical characteristics in that same ecosystem, in that same environment. But that being said, you know, what is strength training? It is quite an ambiguous term today, especially as it's gotten muddied in the waters of the Instagram industry. And strength training, simply put, is doing things with resistance or load on the body in order to get stronger than you are today into the future. And it's not an absolute strength metric. It's not even a relative strength metric. It's trying to be better than you were yesterday, but also being able to take into account that there are a lot of different ways to get quote unquote stronger. And it's not necessarily only just the most polarizing of it, having more weight on the barbell. Barbell lifting and strength training are not synonymous with one another. It's a form of it, but we need to take into account that there's many different forms that we can push into different types of clientele in different systems for different goals. But there is nothing that can reproduce the benefits from health and performance that strength training does. It is definitely the cornerstone of our system and many successful systems out there.
I love that point, especially about how strength and always chasing numbers. When we find so many people always continuously chasing a number, but when we look at the different kind of principles of strength training, where we have progressive overload, where we do want to chase some kind of additional stimulus, but that doesn't have to be extra weight on the bar. We have range of motion. Well, if you're increasing your range of slightly, then what's going to happen is that's going to be an extra work each rep, and then that work is going to accumulate to a bigger set, and that can be enough alone. Then we've got time under tension. We've got things where we can just slow things down sometimes, like, or even it could just be the power produced rather than the strength. Like, are you moving that bar faster this time? There's so many other different ways that we can challenge that progressive overload rather than just, okay, more weight on the bar today.
No doubt. And one of my favorite ways to progress, even if weight isn't necessarily getting heavier on the bar, is skill and proficiency in movement patterns. So if you are able to execute a pattern that is looking pristine, it looks biomechanically sound, and it looks neurologically tight and awesome, then that is going to be a progression in itself, because many times we're just like so stuck on like strength or hypertrophy or metabolic conditioning or cardiovascular conditioning. Well, what about movement quality? And I think that is one of these things that today is underserved, because the better that we can move, the more pristine our quality is, the more training effect that we can elicit that is desired, and the less training effect on the non-desired areas, the joints, the ligaments, the tendons, the non-contractile tissues that are commonly associated with wear, tear, and chronic injuries, and we can limit that. So really trying to progress your skill, even if skill is not necessarily strength the same way, that's going to be a huge benefit to people, because as we know, many of the clients that come into us, they are going to be intelligently strength training for maybe the first time ever. And being able to build a rapport and actually build a system where they can scale and make a wider spectrum of what they are physically capable of doing, it's a really important thing. We want people to be empowered. We want people to feel confident. And they want them to feel like they have a skill set that could not only be at benchmark, but they could roll into any city in the country and reproduce that in the gym as well, because of the proficiency that the coach has taught them. So that is going to be a huge way to progress as well.
You mentioned movement quality. So what are your standards of movement quality, and what do you consider movement quality to look like?
Movement quality at the highest forms and regards is something that looks effortless. It's something that looks simple. It's something that looks smooth. So if you take into account those three criteria, you know it when you see it. And this is the art of coaching more than anything else. Now, it's very hard sometimes to objectify something as subjective as human movement, but there are certain things that, from a biomechanical perspective, line up properly with joint physics and force production. But then there's also somebody being able to execute it with a skill set that not only looks biomechanically sound in the starting and ending position, but also from an executional perspective, simply is putting the largest amount of stimulus on the trainable factor at play. So that is less compensations, more neutralities, or more emphasis placed on exploring different ranges of motion that are going to be something that is the goal of the exercise, not something that you are pulled into in an uncontrolled based movement. So movement quality is so subjective. And I always say that as personal trainers and as strength and conditioning coaches, we're in the business of matching two of the most subjective things in the world together: human movement and human pain. Whoa, okay, that is our day to day. But really trying to have common sense with something that looks good to you as a coach, something that feels good to the client, and something that you can have a high five after the end of the set. That's really what we're looking for in terms of proficiency of movement.
Oh, well, what a fantastic answer. And so when it comes to that movement proficiency and kind of the way we look at it, we definitely there is times and places where certain exercises are going to want to be felt in certain muscles, right? And we do, especially when maybe the goal might be to hypertrophy a muscle in this stage of programming. So it might be that we want to feel certain things on our hamstrings and our butt rather than our quad, and so on. Well, we can attest on how much a slight movement in certain positions will completely change the muscle that's working. And therefore, the same kind of thing as that kind of movement proficiency is that they have more tools in their tank to be able to move and work certain muscles. And when it does come to then being outside on their field of play, for example, where they can perform the same task with the same outcome in many different ways, which is talk
Yeah,
about injury prevention. That's one of the biggest kind of rules of injury prevention in a sense that they don't have to have repetitive movement in their day-to-day life.
for
Which
sure.
from
And the examples that you give, stepping out on the field or court, it is a very unpredictable environment just with your own body moving through space. And then add in the other participants and players. Oh man, this is the ultimate competition. So, in terms of trying to like broaden out the spectrum of what a human body is meant to be able to do, it's no more complicated than simply getting better or more proficient, as we were saying, at a myriad of different tasks, different
Mm,
positions, trying to actively learn how to stabilize and perform out of these positions. But the reason that that is like so extreme in today's industry is that 80% of our fitness industry consumers, they're going to be starting at a very base level and they need to create a foundation first before we can start actually splaying out this human movement spectrum. And there's nothing wrong with that. In our system, it looks like the squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, locomotion, and then elements of rotation played into account. And starting somebody off with trying to master the foundational pattern of the progression pyramid, it doesn't look sexy. It doesn't look like we could broaden out that spectrum, but it does indeed serve as the foundation so we can start using those slight variations. We can start using the slight methodologies that are going to challenge specific musculature, regions, or movement patterns themselves. And over a longer period of time, being able to basically be able to dominate any position that you get thrown into, that is going to be very advantageous. But the double edged sword of what I just mentioned is that in the gym, we like things looking perfect, right? Like it's our job as coaches to get them good enough. So, one, they don't hurt themselves. Two, they get a good training effect. And three, they come to you the next session without quitting. So, where does imperfect form lay into this conversation? Imperfect form, you have to take into account what is the load on the system at this point in time. I love exploring different rotations, flexions, extensions of the spine, funny positions at the shoulder. Would I ever do that under a 85% one repetition max? No, it's not meant for that. But being able to explore mobility considerations, being able to explore novel positions with no load or minimal load, I think that's the yin to the yang that many programs are missing today. So heavy loading plus light loading in a myriad of different positions, that can transfer into injury risk mitigation, but also potential performance enhancement if it's driven towards the goals or the demands that you're after with that client.
I think a nice way to kind of say this too is we're looking for variability through the structure. What shapes can our body make, and what shapes can we not make? With that ability, do you look at obviously looking day to day in individual's movement pattern, but do you use any type of assessment tool prior to training or any kind of passive ranges of motion that you'll test on your clientele?
I do not today, and I've changed the stance maybe in the last 10 years on our assessment and screening protocols versus our train forward approach that we use today. The reason being is that many clients coming to us today have had a lot of roadblocks coming in. They haven't wanted to go out and train for whatever reason. They didn't have the ability to come into the gyms for a while. We know the reason for that one. And there's so many different barriers to entry that, hey, when they get there with me today, boom, we want to get a training effect on them. And one of the things the Pain Free Performance Specialist certification is now teaching in our systems and methodology is something called the Train Smarter Strategy session. And this is essentially the coach's assessment and screening tool, but is the client feeling like they're training and everyone winning in the process. We have really good data on this showing that, yes, we can help mitigate the risk of injuries using the Train Smarter Strategy session. We can also set them up for future consistency in terms of their physical endeavor. But more than anything, it's a chance for the coach and the client to build rapport, to build a relationship around what you'll be doing for the next months, years, or hopefully decades, which is training together. Training together is a huge thing. And I think that supersedes the importance of maybe looking at somebody's dorsiflexion between 24 and 27 degrees. being able to have your first exposure to the facility, to the coach, to the environment that you came into, and having your best foot step forward on that, I think it's a game changer that not necessarily many people are making today.
Can I ask what the training smarter looks like? Just a quick cap of what it looks like.
Well, you guys are PPSC certified, so you'll know many of the different movements that we look at. So we take them through 6 foundational movement patterns: squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry. But then we also break down the 6 developmental pattern sequences and put them into different positions with different demands. So we look from supine to prone to side lying to kneeling to tall kneeling to half kneeling, quadruped, standing. So we look at these different positions with different demands in terms of creating rotation, resisting rotation, or trying to combine global movements with upper and lower bodies together. This takes about 45 minutes to get through. It's a combination of like, hey, this was a really good warm up, and hey, I did a bunch of different things that challenged me. And people like it. They get a little bit sweaty. They feel their ass and their abs turn on a little bit, which is always a good thing. And then the coach is sitting there making mental notes or physical notes on the notepad saying that, hey, we got the linchpin, maybe where we're going to start focusing on. And here's the things that we can move forward today with, that we can empower you with, instead of my big pet peeve in the industry today is like, yep, you suck at this, you suck at this, you suck at this, you're not so bad at this one, but you also suck at this one. And then the client's like, well, what the hell? Like, I'm surprised I could even walk in the door with all these problems that you just said I had. As opposed to, hey, let's focus in on what you can do, empower that, and then clean up the weak links little by little without putting a huge amount of emphasis on them. Because the average person has had their asses kicked the last number of years. It's like, it's been everything in the world just to get them into the gym that day. It's like, we need to be the ones to empower them, not the ones to tell them that they're, again, a broken piece of shit.
I think that was so well said, because I think so commonly we can have the potential to nocebo an individual when they walk into the door. Oh, you have this pain, you have these limitations, you have these restrictions, and straight away you're setting the standard and the mindset through your language and kind of taking away from the experience, the potential experience. I think everything you've explained there is you're creating buy-in, you're forcing a strong habit, you're getting feel-good chemicals happening. It's a safe, effective, fun environment, and that is nothing but engaging for the individual that might be a bit tentative on their first effort to start building this beautiful journey and this beautiful habit that needs to be undertaken. So I love everything you said there. That was beautiful.
Yeah, and they feel capable straight away. So they're getting straight into it, and they feel capable really quickly. So they're ready to go. It's lovely.
We've seen 8 out of every 10 clients that will walk into a new fitness solution for the first time. They'll fall very nicely into the empowerment model. It's like, let's do this Plan Smarter strategy session. Let's get you trained right away. And then we can get the data over the next week or two that we need in order to really just check all of our boxes morally as coaches to give them the best product possible. But there are those 2 out of 10 people that fall through the cracks, whether this be a return to train client coming off of physio or something like that, or somebody that is really just dealing with a lot of different cofactors in terms of their orthopedic or their systemic health. Maybe they've just had some challenges in the past and they're not the ones that would jump right into that solution. That's the time and place to be a little bit more well-versed. And it has nothing to do with coaching, it has nothing to do with your intake process. It has to do with having common sense of knowing people and being able to give that person what they need at that time to continue to take steps forward in the process. It's something that we're also working on with the PPSC, is having this secondary assessment heavy focus for a first session for maybe those tweeners that may fall through the cracks in a training centric first approach.
That's cool. I'm very curious. Obviously, training and being a coach, there's so much biomechanical information that you need to take on that's applicable to the individual. But I reckon a period of our job that doesn't get enough limelight is the psychology and how you interact, the language you use, the environment you create. And everything that you described there just sounds like such great psychological, like placed well with your psychology, with how you're engaging with the individual. Is that based just on experience, or is there resources or something that you've read or engaged with and you've mindfully made these decisions and been influenced by?
I think a lot of the hot topics in today's industry, whether it be in training or more so nutrition, is based on really habitual cognitive behavioral therapy based models. And being able to get information out of people, but also give them what they need in return with your communication back is going to be very, very advantageous. I think originally, just from just anecdotal experience of like, hey, this has worked really well with my specific model, that's where it has come from. But we're seeing more and more of the popularization of this high performance psychology come through, especially in America. You guys are probably too smart to be reading books like that over in Australia. We're way smarter than we are. But we have this hot topic today. It's like, man, mental health is a struggle here in the US. Like, mental health is no joke right now. We're in an epidemic of mental health, and it's spanning from children all the way up into elders and everyone in between. And if you would have asked me a number of years ago, like, what's the most important factor for achieving healthiness? I'd be like, oh, it's what you're eating. It's what you're eating, and it's your environment. All of a sudden, man, you asked me that same question today. It's what's going through this. It's what's going through your mind. It's your potential barriers. It's your pitfalls. It's your roadblocks. It's your doubts. It's your lack of relationships. It's your lack of confidence. It's your lack of empowerment. There's all these different factors. And I think that if we can't start addressing that as fitness professionals and health professionals, then we're never going to get the optimal result in relationship with our clients. Like, I don't care how great your diet is. I don't care how dialed up Mitch just put this next block for benchmark. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff until you can walk in not only feeling good about yourself, but feeling good at the environment that you're in, knowing that you're moving positive direction. And it's such a big one. But as coaches, we have more contact time with our clients than any other allied health or fitness professional out there. We got to take that seriously. You know, we have hours a week to impact the way that people live their lives, upstairs and downstairs and inside of their hearts. Like, we need to be taking that a little bit more seriously, because those are the things that amplify the efforts in the gym. Because as you know, 2 to 3 hours a week of training, a lot can go awry when you leave that gym. We need to be able to formulate skill sets, relationships, but also habits that can push us forward without us being the problem of not achieving our end goals.
Wow. Yeah.
I got goosebumps. I love it.
So well said. And like you're saying, that the psychology there and the confidence is going to help you in the gym, but it's also most importantly going to help you get to the gym and train at the gym, where it's one of the biggest issues that we find is just accountability. People want to train, but when they're at home and they're relaxing, they just can't get the motivation to train. And I think you just explained like kind of what the motivation is that what you are thinking in your head, what's going through your head, your thought patterns and all that is really going to help you get to the gym and start training. I love that. Well said.
Thank
Such
you.
well said. I've got a bit of a woohoo question for you, John. So in Australia, obviously it might be a bit different to the US at the moment, but do you have any view on like the systemic health system, or anything that you feel that might need to be changed from a large cultural perspective or a health system perspective that needs to be addressed at the moment to impact people's physical and mental health? So I know we have our issues in Australia at the moment, but I'm sure the US, with such a large population, has its own concerns, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
The multi-trillion-dollar answer right here on this podcast right now. You guys heard it here first. I mean, this is a loaded question, Mitch. Like, it's one that I think we will continue to try to answer for the entirety of our lives, if not our children's lives. And this is something that is not moving in the right direction. You look at the incidence of some prime health vital metrics, things like obesity rates skyrocketing here in America and across the country, or across the world. We have preventable diseases are becoming more and more prevalent, and just general lifestyle diseases and performance have decreased. So we have some serious issues here. And I'll be the first one to say, it's like, hey, we can't just like correct these issues by pushing around a sled and squatting with a bar on our back. Like, these are some deeply rooted issues that training definitely plays a factor in and can help prevent or mitigate the risk, but it's not everything. And I always say that us as coaches, we have the ability to grassroots. We have the ability to grassroots one client at a time, one small group at a time, one team at a time. And we can allow ourselves to have that impact on those individuals, knowing very well that they have an increased rate of impact on their community, on their families, on their workplace, and that. But some of the, where to start on this one? Mental health, we just nailed it. Mental health, it's going to be very difficult to go chase down a fat loss goal, a hypertrophy goal, getting your knees and back out of pain goal, if you can't stay consistently working hard enough in the gym to push that forward. Aside from that, I think we need to look at the two other factors that are kind of the pink elephant in the room today. Really, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with strength conditioning, but it will impact our clients and our communities. First one is our nutrition. Our nutrition is deteriorating very quickly. We are eating more processed shit than ever before. We are eating more of it than ever before. And this is having a large impact on the rest of our lifestyle. It's having an impact on our energy. It's having an impact on our sleep quality. It's having an impact on our ability to communicate. That alone, our nutrition, is going to be a massive moving factor. But again, here in America, you say the word nutrition or you say the word diet. I don't use the word diet anymore because people just jump all over my back. But there's a very convoluted space, and there's a lot of different ideologies and ideas out there. But going back into just general principles and trying to reverse what we've done to ourselves, I think that's going to be one of the fights of a lifetime for us. Secondly, on that, one that we do have a little bit more control over is our non-exercise daily movement. So it's not the things that you're doing in the gym, it's everything that you're doing out of the gym in the waking day. So our daily movement here in America has been decreasing for the last decade and even before that. But we've seen a huge decrease in the last 2 years. Most recent data is maybe 4 or 5 months old on this. We used to be like, hey, yeah, let's get 10,000 steps a day. Now it's like, hey, let's get those 25% of Americans that are getting sub 1,800 steps a day to get 3,000 steps a day, just so they can put themselves in a better position to hopefully not die from all known causes of mortality. So it's been a very low level there, but we're getting less movement than ever before. But I think that goes hand in hand with the technologies of today, but also the way that we work and the way that we are living our lives outside of work. We have more handheld technology use. Recent study just showed that we have 13 hours and 4 minutes of screen use per day here in America. And you're like, how could that be possible?
Confronting.
Between your computer, your phone, your tablet, and all the other technologies that you have, it's been really increasing. And the increase was pretty crazy because we went from 12 hours and a couple minutes last year up to over 13 this year. That's a huge increase in a 1-year time span. So that is going to be something prevalent that we're going to be continuing to fight against. But the way that we do that is to be able to move throughout our day, to have a morning movement practice, to have an evening movement practice. I always recommend to stand up and move around a little bit every waking hour, even if you're at your computer and that's the predominant part of your workday. Moving more is key. Movement is medicine, and the best health and longevity, quote unquote, drug out there is exercise and movement. And that's something that it's a very, very low hanging fruit on the tree for many people to pick. And it just has to do with moving your body more, and it doesn't necessarily even have to do with anything in the gym.
Fantastic, mate. I'm really happy to say that we got to have you out in, I think it was 2018, running your PPSC course, and we love that we got qualified up with that. I think I thought last I saw, linking back into that question we just had, I think you've got now, it's about 11,000 qualified coaches.
You said 13.
Yeah, we're pushing
13,000. Wow.
13, yeah.
So mate, that's great to see you're having that effect on the coaching industry, and then those coaches are out there hoping to make a positive effect and spread this messaging out there. Because I think that's the only way we can do it right, is keep having these same conversations, empower other individuals that don't know it yet, teach them, and they keep teaching other people and have that kind of butterfly effect out to the wider populace, and hopefully getting people moving more, feeling better, eating healthier, doing all those beautiful practices they need to do.
And with, like you said, like with the general population actually getting more unhealthy, then what's actually slowly happening is we coaches learning more and more and more and wanting to inflict this kind of like higher rate of training on people, we're getting a bigger barrier of entry. So the idea of your kind of what you've just said about testing people when they're in, getting them as soon as possible, building their confidence up. What I love about that so much is it drops that barrier of entry and allows nearly anyone to come in and start training straight away, builds their confidence. And like you said, so like socially, psychologically, they're going to walk away and be like, I can get back in and I can do another session just like I did before, rather than be told, no, you can never deadlift again, or, oh, I wouldn't do that, or you can't do this, and all that stuff. Yeah, fantastic.
I think it's a very limiting scope too. Is like we shackle people down with what they can't do instead of empowering what they can do. But that also is a double-edged sword. There's two different aspects of that as well, because coaches like you are not common over in Australia, let alone the world. High class, high performing coaches that are doing great with their clients. But you're not everybody. The average trainer in today's industry, what are they going to do with a client day one when they come in to train after not doing anything for 3 years, maybe sitting on their couch? Oh, I'm going to show them that I'm going to crush these people. They're going to debilitate these people. They're going to crush them with volume, with intensities. They're going to go 60 minutes of that 60-minute session with a heart rate of 195. And that person is going to crawl out of the gym and never want to go back. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that over the last year and a half, is that coaches that mean well are not qualified or not willing to do step-by-step, smart, scalable approaches to a re-entry of a fitness solution. And this ends up with clients. This is something that, oh man, this breaks my heart every time I hear it. I hear it way too much. A client said, hey, I know I'm 80 pounds overweight. I tried fitness and working out didn't work for me. Whoa, God, that's where we're at today. It's like the average person thinks that they must do these extreme things with their diet, with their training, with their lifestyle in order to just move the needle a tiny bit and gain a little bit of momentum. And that's the one thing I do think that's holding us back. That if we are doing smart, systemized training, nutrition, and lifestyle practices, those practices can compound into something big. And more importantly, it's something that can be sustained for life, as opposed to the quick fix, quick hit, everything now that is guaranteed to burn somebody out or break somebody down in a matter of time. That's what we're up against in today's industry, though, because you guys saw it better than anyone, the rise of the functional fitness and the HIIT training over in Australia. I mean, that was hot for a while, and that was captivating the minds of all of the potential audiences across the entire country. Didn't end up working out that well.
Yeah. And you wouldn't believe how often in a session that we're not just pushing someone forward and being like a cheerleader, going lift heavier, like move faster, do all this. So often we're actually putting people back as well. So a lot of the job is just finding where people are and then taking them slightly forward, putting them back, stopping them from making a stupid decision themselves because they want to put more weight on the bar. All of a sudden you're like, that's a massive increase. Why would you be doing that right now? Like that's steadily move up. And also getting people in from other gyms coming in here sometimes who just are so used to just going 100% balls to the wall like the whole time that we're like, okay, well, we've got a plan here. Let's find out where you're at, and then let's move you forward slowly. And in long term, we'll get you in more sessions. You'll be making so much more progress this way. So a lot of the job is just like finding where they're at and then just slowly moving them forward rather than and actually holding them back quite often. You find that as well, right?
Definitely get those crush it mentality. Go hard all the time. You're an absolute pussy if you ever go like at 50%. You got to auto-regulate those individuals to whatever the current task or plan is. And
there's a time and a place still. Still, there is a time and a place to go super hard, but it doesn't need to be every day.
The art of coaching.
Exactly. It's that's what they're paying for. You're essentially, as their coach, you are a real-time problem solver in the space for them.
Yeah.
Simply put.
Yeah,
you are the expert, you are the guide on a journey, and you are going to problem solve when the roadblock hits. That's what coaching's all about. That is what Mitch just said, the art of coaching.
I'm very curious because I love where you're at, and honestly, I just find myself nodding, going, "Oh yes, I agree with everything you're saying." How has your headspace evolved since you started off as a coach? Like Dr. John now, what advice would you be giving yourself when you just came out of PT school and what lessons, is that what the PPSC is now, or would you give yourself some separate advice to start off your career?
I think you answered it. I think the reason that we are so passionate and we're so driven on the mission of PPSC is because I wish I had this when I was a 20-something-year-old brand new coach that was bench pressing every football player that came in and then running through machine circuits. Like, I wish I had something like this. And when you hear the same thing enough times, we hear from our coaches that go through, especially the coaches that are within 3 months to 3 years of being in this profession. They say, hey, this allowed me to simply coach my clients the way that I always wanted to coach them. It gave me a checklist and a blueprint to make sure I was doing the right things. And it gave me permission to train, especially if somebody is not feeling 100% pain free. And that's going to be your average client. Nobody's 100% pain free. We're all dealing with niggles and boo boos and injuries and things that we wish never happened in our life. But I think taking the textbook, taking the complex areas of exercise science, of physiology, of bioanatomy, okay, taking that complex and making it simple. That's what we do very well. But over the last 2 years, we've challenged the PPSC curriculum to make this simple actionable, meaning like I'm not interested in any of our instructors teaching any portion of the curriculum if our students and our attendees cannot instantly take action upon the information. But then we took it one step further this year and we said, we want to take the actionable and make it automatic. How do we systemize this in such a way that you can run the system? The system runs and everything is better because of it. That is making something automatic, an automated system that can service people as well as anything in the world.
Heck yes. Mate, how you've got to where you are at, during your learning journey, what were like your biggest influences to get to where your headspace is at the moment? Like people or courses, what made you or what influenced you to where you're at the moment? Like, I know this could be a big one, but a condensed version.
Yeah, it's where I'm at the moment. I think it comes with being a partner, being a father, being a business owner at this point in time where I provide for many of my employees and the businesses that we have. So it becomes a little bit more pressurized to the point where you're like, yo, we don't want to fuck this up. And when the back is against the wall with that mentality, it's like, hey, we need to fine tune, we need to simplify, we need to be able to create something that is bigger than myself, but also that can impact as many people as possible. But I think that that journey probably started around the time that I was at Benchmark, Canterbury. Going out, I think that year I taught like 35 or 40 different events. It was crazy. Like I came back from that year of travel and it was, I think, Thanksgiving or Christmas time. And it was everything that I could do to get back into the US and like not check myself into the hospital. I was like so fucked up. I was overtrained. I was underslept. I was going time zone to time zone. I was teaching these courses like a crazy man, 16 hours of talking in a 2-day period. It was pretty wild. I was trap bar deadlifting with Mitch, trying to outdo him with a velocity meter. Like I was doing some crazy shit. And at that point in time, I was like, all right, I can continue this on. It's fun. Like I love doing it. It's fun going out and teaching. It's fun connecting with great gentlemen like yourself everywhere across the world. It's fun to tell my stories. It's fun to do all this, but when does fun change into how can this help more people? Because at that time, we were getting great information out there, but it wasn't helping the most amount of people. And I would say that my largest influence on that was after the fact. Over 10 years ago, my dad passed away. I was actually relatively young, and he had a large impact on our community growing up. And he had so much to do with my upbringing, my mentality. He had very similar drive and energy that I had. I call it genetic, but I think it was genetic also combined with environmental factors of growing up with such a great leader. And I look back on it as like, okay, if I'm going to do this for real, like this has to become something bigger than myself. And then looking at that, knowing that the team had to be built out, knowing that the community had to be built in the right way, something that you feel good about, being able to get the right people on board, but also doing it for the sole purpose of trying to impact many more people other than the people that may just be sitting in weekend by weekend all across the world. I think that was a big determining factor of like where the moves were going to be made, where the changes were going to be made. And from there, being able to build out a world-class team is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It continues to be an extraordinarily tough thing on a daily basis, but it's the most rewarding thing to see something that you had a hand in playing out. Something that potentially came from your brain into this training system, being able to be taught by a fellow expert and being able to be broadcasted across different spectrums. That's something that I saw with some of my influences, as you were asking about, Mitch. I saw, Kelly Starrett be able to do similar things in the early 2000s, being able to text him about his experiences and some of the things that he was able to do. Looking at a functional movement screen, or Gray Cook, or those guys, Lee Burton, them being able to do something similar. I think that the influences were out there, the role modeling was out there. But taking it into account, I just wanted to do a little bit different and do it with a little bit more of the PPSC flair and my personality's flair on it. But yeah, here we are in almost 2023. It's going okay.
Congratulations, mate. That's amazing to see where you've come to. How
Appreciate
many countries have you penetrated now, and how big has the staff grown? Like, where are you at the moment with the vision, and how are you penetrating?
So we have 20 instructors, and a vast majority of them are in the US and Canada. And prior to COVID, we were actually in infrastructure laid down in 6 different regions across the world. COVID kind of erased that. So we're back up and trying to start over again, just getting re-access to Australia last year, getting re-access into the Middle East and Europe. That's a bit of a mess right now, which is a totally different topic. But we look at trying to get as many different areas being able to teach and also run these methods as possible. And one of the big initiatives for next year, I like your word, penetrate. We're going to penetrate a bunch of different regions again next year. And that's one thing that getting back on the road, as I haven't been teaching as much the last 2.5 years, I'm going to be personally making it out to Australia next year, going back into Europe,
Nice.
the Middle East, Canada, and then a couple cities in the US here as well. But the goal is to try to go all over the place again, because there were a few better days in my life than like hanging out, like drinking beers with you guys at Sydney Harbor.
Well, mate, we'll make sure we do it again when you're out here next time.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
have to book that in.
Yeah.
We can have another battle on that trap bar, by the way. Look forward to it. Mate, I'll go like to go like so we talked about your past influences. At the moment, like, what's the next evolution? Like, anything that you're consuming at the moment, or you've got like we've talked a bit about your vision already, but is there anything you're consuming from a biomechanical standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, or anything that you're uptaking at the moment, like a book you're reading, course you're doing at the moment that's influencing your decisions?
A lot of the work that I've been focusing on over the last about year and a half is taking our systems and utilizing the staff now and having different specialists in every little side of the system. So we're lucky to have specialists in physical therapy and orthopedics and functional training and kettlebells and every different aspect of the fitness industry, and trying to deep dive as much as we possibly can on each and every one of those different areas, but then bring it back and make it, again, actionable and automatic. So trying to refine our systems. This has led to the brand new course that is going to be offered next year, which is going to be called Functional Strength Training. And functional strength training is the multimodalic method that we use for health, we use for performance, we use for longevity, and we use for every different type of goal all in between, utilizing another phasic system very similar to the phasic system used in the PPSC with our warm-up and our pre-training protocols. This course focusing on training as the primary key. And taking all of that information and truncating it back down into, again, another 16-hour, 2-day certification course. It's been a lot of information, but we're to the point where we want principles to be able to speak through. We want to be able to, again, offer a blueprint, a checklist of best practices based on the available principles today in exercise science, physiology, coaching, and the art of coaching, and be able to have somebody take our system and be able to run with it again. We're actually beta testing this specific course, Functional Strength Training Certification, in 2.5 weeks here in my hometown of Madison, Wisconsin. So this will be the next iteration that people have been waiting about 4 years for. Because that's the one question that we get. It's like, enough people go through PPSC, they're like, all right, this was awesome. Yeah. What's next? It's always, what's next? Like, oh man, like I just talked for 18 straight hours. Like, I'll let you know when it comes out, and it's coming out. So this is where we're at going into 2023. It's very exciting to see, in my view, the yin to the yang come through. We talked about screening, assessment protocols, phasic systems, and recovery. We talked about everything other than training in the PPSC course. So this will be the yin to the PPSC's training yang.
It's a fantastic idea. It seems like the natural evolution to the first course. And I love what you're saying about like just getting people to understand. I don't think it's done enough in courses where people actually have taken from kettlebells and explain a little bit of, hey, we use a little bit of kettlebells, we use them for this. We use bars for this. We use trap bars for this. We use dumbbells for this. And these are different reasons to use things, rather than everything be like, let's use kettlebells. Let's fix ourselves to kettlebells and be like, let's use kettlebells for everything. Like, I think it started off with people just setting up cheap gyms sometimes. It's like, okay, the cheapest gym I could get is to buy 50 kettlebells. So it's really cool to see that kind of like you're using principles around, like from what I gather there, like equipment and people's training methods to how to program and progress people on from the PPC.
Learning that,
For
like,
sure.
it's just finding the right tool for the job, right? And they're just tools, and you can pick the right tool for whatever needs to be executed.
Exactly.
That was one of our goals. So no matter what you have, no matter what your focus is, I want to be able to utilize this system in a smart and systematic way so you're able to get what you want out of your training. And one of the things that holds back education in the fitness industry, at least in my mind, is that many courses, I would argue that 90% of the courses out there, are driven at a specific tool or a specific modality. They're simply trying to sell you a kettlebell because they're at the kettlebell course, or they're trying to sell you this T tool or something like that so you can scrape the shit out of your clients or patients if you're a physiotherapist. So our education goes, you know what? We don't give a fuck because we don't sell equipment. We don't sell specific training protocols. What we sell is a system that you can take all of your backgrounds, all of your experience, all of your interests, and plug and play it into this model. That's the reason that we're able to get physiotherapists, physicians, personal trainers, strength coaches, Pilates instructors, yoga instructors, all to be able to appreciate a movement practice that can be well-rounded. And we're unbiased in that way. Like, I love utilizing different tools. Like, even if people make fun of me on Instagram, like, it's all right. I think that being able to, again, get back to what we were talking about before, this well-rounded human movement spectrum. How do you get better at building skills? How do you get better at accessing positions? You do some different things, but you have to have a why behind what you're doing. And that's missing again today many times.
Oh, just bloody well done. Any questions for Mr. Dr. John?
I just want one quick thing that I've used. I've quoted you maybe a million times, and I don't know if this is originally you, but just I love the saying, making lightweight feel heavy so you can make heavyweight feel light. And like talking about that kind of progressive model, I think that's so sometimes when you can't explain progressive overload to someone, you just say that to them, and they're like, okay, I get it. So yeah, thank you for that. The course was amazing. I look forward to your next course.
And mate, I'm a big believer in what you do and what you preach. And mate, just want to thank you so much for what you've done for us, as in, you know, coming out here and running your course in our facility. We love that. And it's been great to reconnect with you, and just thank you for your time and what you do.
Sadly, I think
and I want to give you two a shout
I don't
out.
think we have enough space for your next one.
Yeah. I want to give you guys
We'll be
a
there,
shout
though,
out
mate.
before we get out of here, because I know a lot of your clients are listening to this. If you're a client at Benchmark Canterbury and you're listening to this podcast right now, thank James, thanks Mitch, because you have two of the best coaches out there. Not only are they awesome coaches in the training sessions, they truly care about you and your community more than almost any coach I've ever seen. And it's something that is a passion project that these two are going on a day-to-day basis with. And from 2018 on to today, it's a rare thing. You know, I've been all around the world. We've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of facilities. And you two, you stand out to me. And I'm not just saying that blowing smoke up your Australian asses. I do mean it.
Thanks, mate. I'll send you the payment later. Thank you for that.
Exactly.
You read the script. Well done.
I think you can probably see our goosebumps while you're saying that when we zoom in on this on the camera. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it. Likewise.
Thank you so much for your time, mate. Again, hope you have a great day, and we look forward to connecting when you're in Australia next.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you, my man.
Thanks, mate.